Okay, where's my gavel? Right here.
Ow.
Okay, I will call the June 5th, 2017 Select Board meeting to order and invite you to rise and join me in Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Select Board meeting and just remind you, anyone that has a cell phone, if you could turn it to silent or buzz, we'd appreciate it. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, then let's see. First order then, or the next order is agenda additions and changes. Mr. Manager.
Yes, I thought it prudent that I bring out for your attention a previous agenda item. It's a memo from Dennis Lutz dated April 18th, and contained within that memo is the framework of questions to perform the evaluation for tonight's interviews. And that's it.
Okay. Looks like Irene put something by her place.
I did. I have some extensive corrections to the Select Board minutes. A number of the lines were out of order chronologically, and I understand we're summarizing minutes more often, but to have things showing up a half hour after they actually occurred to me seemed a little odd. And I also handed out a smaller sheet with an addition to the school board minutes.
Okay. Nothing else? Okay, I need a motion to approve these additions to the agenda.
Question on
Yep.
on what you've provided us, Pat.
Yes.
Where is the
Page
questions?
2, under number 1, it's entitled Use the following framework of questions to perform the evaluation for the interview for tonight's discussion.
You know what? Looks like I copied this and it didn't go onto double-sided, so I will go make a double-sided copy.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Okay, good question. But we're going to have that at our place, double-sided correctly. So do I have a motion to approve, a motion to add these items to the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Irene. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, any further discussion on adding these two items to the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, then we're on to item number 4, which is public to be heard. That's a time for members of the public or the Select Board to talk to the Select Board about topics that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone here tonight wishing to speak during public to be heard? Pat.
I'd like to remind the board that since we do have somebody on the phone, if it's not going to be a unanimous vote, it needs to be roll call vote.
Okay, but unanimous would be okay not to do.
Unanimous is fine.
Okay, very good. Okay, then if there's no public, okay, Irene?
I'd just like to mention that I attended the ETC Next workshop on a Saturday that was about the new town center. And I was the only selectman there, for what it's worth. And I did not say anything, I just listened.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else on public to be heard? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to Mike?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mike.
for someone who is sitting so close to the microphone, I'm having trouble hearing Miss Renner. And I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to have trouble hearing Miss Cook because they are soft-spoken. So, anyway, if you could indulge me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Sue, would it be okay if you moved into Mike's spot? Maybe that might help?
I'd be glad to, but I'm still struggling with being called soft-spoken because I've never been called it.
Now, see, I couldn't even appreciate that because I couldn't hear it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, try to speak up here. Okay, so we're going to move on to business items, number 5 on our agenda. And tonight we have interviews and discussions for the Public Work Evaluation Committee. Remember, that's a 5-member committee. There's 2 selectmen, 2 trustees, and 1 technical expert. And we're very fortunate tonight that we have 4 highly qualified candidates to interview tonight. One of them, Justin, said he'll be here, but he's going to be closer to his time slot, which is about 7:30. So, as is our practice, we go through the agenda for interviews as they appear on our agenda, And to make sure that the person going first is not put at a disadvantage, and the other, we asked the other interviewees if they would mind stepping into the ante room here while we have the first interview, and then we'll have either Doug or Greg bring you in one at a time. And when you're done, you're more than welcome to stay. But we feel that's a way to try to keep it as fair as we can. So I'll ask Paul to please come up and join us at the table here. And if Tom and Dick don't mind to step outside for just a few. Thank you so much. Hello, Paul. And
Good evening.
I'd really like to say thank you for being willing to step forward and participate in this. We greatly appreciate that. So what we'd like to do is, if you could, I mean, we all know you, but just for the record, to give us your background, your understanding of public works operations, and maybe a little bit about why you'd like to be on this committee.
Okay. Not used to sitting at the table. I'm usually stuck in the front row there. That's okay. So my name is Paul O'Leary. I'm a 29-year Essex resident. I live at 20 Essex Highlands in the town. I'm a professional engineer registered in the state of Vermont. I worked construction when I first got out of school for about 10 or 12 years, then moved into the consulting business. I was originally a partner with Lamro, Stone, and Dickinson, or Lamro and Stone and O'Leary at that point in time. And then I left about, must be close to 20 years now to form my own business, O'Leary Burke. So I'm partners with Dave Burke. So we do residential and commercial land use planning and permitting throughout Vermont, mostly in Chittenden County, because that's where most of the work is. Do a lot of work in the town of Essex and in the village. Not quite as much, there's not as much that goes on in the village. It's a little bit more built out. But have a lot of experience working with the zoning board, planning commission boards, work a lot with public works, not so much in terms of reviewing budgets or anything like that, but basically just day-to-day operations, discussing the projects that we're bringing forward. And to a lesser amount, we work with the village, Jim Jutras and Rick Jones and that crew doing the same sort of thing. So my perspective would be a little bit different than maybe one of the public works directors or like Dick or Justin, in that I'm more of an outside guy, not so much of a budget and looking at that. I'm more used to the customer service end, the relationship that engineers like myself and the public has with the two public works departments. So a little different perspective. Pat had called me and asked if I'd be willing to volunteer and have you consider me doing this work for the select board. And again, as a 29-year resident, it's like, yeah, I have some time. I'm on the ETC committee, that the project that you attended a couple Saturdays ago. So yeah, I try to put my time in as much as I can and be a good public servant occasionally. So I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, that's just a little different perspective than what the other guys would bring. So
Okay. Thank you, Paul. So I'll open it up to questions from the board. If anybody has a question for Paul. Sue, sure.
So, you mentioned you're on the ETC committee.
yes.
What kind of role do you tend to play on a committee?
Yeah, on the ETC committee, actually that's a tough role because I am the engineer for Rick Bove. I'm the engineer for Peter Elliman, who does the town center. I'm the engineer for Hannaford's. So essentially, I'm the engineer for all of the people in the so-called town center. So I bring a lot of technical expertise, knowing about the traffic and the water and the sewer. On the other hand, I have to be a little bit careful with my opinions because obviously I represent, all the property owners, and so I don't want to be, necessarily pushing what's best for the property owners. But mostly it's the technical portion of it they put me on the committee for. So, and obviously I have a lot of drawings. I have a lot of knowledge of the utilities, so I can bring things to the table that other people couldn't.
Thanks. Somebody else?
Other questions? Mike, do you have any questions for Paul?
No, other than to just say thank you, Paul, for your willingness to step up and be considered for this position. I would think your profession would allow you to bring, as you mentioned, some expertise and a different perspective, perhaps, to the discussion. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Irene?
I'm looking back at these documents that we signed a few years back, and I'm reminded that 2 select board members and 2 trustees are part of the review committee, as is 1 qualified outside technical agent. And I'm just wondering, in hindsight, would you feel better if there were more outside technical agents on a committee like this?
No, not really. Wouldn't make a difference to me, I think. I think the 2 trustees and the 2 select board members of the committee are certainly going to bring a strong budget component. You know, you're familiar with how things work. You're certainly familiar with the different projects that are going on. So I think the role of the outside consultant is basically to keep the 2 trustees and 2 select board members honest. You know, make sure they're focused. They're focused and they're not. You know. So
To the project.
Hence my comment, you might want more than one of you.
yeah.
Thanks.
So,
One more question.
yes.
I think that this committee's supposed to wrap up their work by the beginning of September,
Yes.
right? Is that the? So that means this is something that's going to be, over the summer months.
Yes.
Any concerns with commitment?
No problems there. So summer's busy for us, so we typically don't take any extended vacation time or anything like that. So
The number of meetings would you anticipate? There wouldn't be that many, I don't think. Would it?
I don't believe there'd be a lot of meetings. Maybe on average, maybe 1 a month or possibly 2, depending upon how the discussions go at the organizational meeting and whether or not everybody has a clear understanding of the agreement and the same understanding of the agreement.
Okay.
I guess
Andy.
to key off of something that Pat said, do you feel you have a good understanding of what the agreement is? Do you recognize what we've attempted to do here?
I think so. I've read the memorandum a couple times, then I read the article that was in the Reporter last week. So I think I'd certainly have to dig into it a little bit more detail if I was selected, but I have a fairly good idea of what you're looking to accomplish with the committee.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question if I could.
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
So, Paul, just to kind of follow on to that comment, and without poking too far, because the committee is going to be resolving this issue, but I'm just wondering what your take has been on the consolidation efforts to date, in general terms.
Well, in general terms, I've been in favor of consolidation from the start. So, with not knowing all the details, I'm hoping that as we go down the road, this will be successful and we'll try to eliminate some of the duplication of services that currently happen.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. So again, Paul, thank you for being willing to step up
Welcome.
and do this. So the process is that we're going to have an executive session later to have discussions. We'll come out of executive session to make a determination of out of the 4 excellent candidates, and then somebody from the manager's office, Pat or somebody, will give you a call tomorrow, let you know.
All right, thank
What
you.
the
Well,
decision was.
you have 4 excellent candidates, so
Can't go
I
wrong.
think no matter what you do, it's going to turn out well for you. So thanks. Have a good evening.
Okay,
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you again. Okay. So, Greg's gonna go get Tom.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, but I have a seat over there by that other microphone. Thanks, Tom. So again, thank you for coming tonight and for, again, stepping forward to be considered. Tom, most of us know you, but if you could just remind us of your background, your familiarity with public works operations, and maybe a little bit about why you'd like to be considered for this committee.
Well, my background is I've lived in Essex for 45 years, which obviously is not all my life. And I've been involved in town and village affairs for a whole number of those years. Served a year as a selectman as Ed Baker's replacement. I was on the Board of Trustees in the 70s. I've been on the Essex Junction Zoning Board since, I think, 1984. And presently I'm chairman of it. Been involved in real estate since 1970. And since 84, I've been involved in building and developing real estate. And as a developer, I deal with both public works departments and got to know all the personnel very well.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't know, did I cover that? Oh, and Pat asked me if I would consider doing this.
Excellent.
You know, I had to talk with him about it. I said, sure, I do it. I mean, I'm always kind of involved in what's going on. I was on that 27-person committee that, with Sue, just recently did the TGIA, I think we call it.
For growth and action, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so anyway, that's kind of where I come from.
Okay, very good. I'll open up questions from the board. Any questions for Tom? Anybody?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mike.
Tom, I would, first of all, like to thank you for your willingness to step in and be considered for this. I appreciate it, and as I'm sure the other members of the select board and the community do as well. My question is, and again, without digging too far into it, what's your sense of the success or the shortcomings of consolidation efforts to date have been?
Well, Mike, I'm sort of amazed that it's gotten this far, and I have to say I'm pleased about it. You know, having been through this since I was on the Board of Trustees in 1975, and back then we couldn't even be in the same room with anybody from the town. And then things started to change a little bit, but every time it seemed as though we were making progress, something bad happened and it went away for a few years. So having seen the cooperation that the two boards have over the last, 3 years or so, it's pretty nice to see it happen. And I think it's happening in a smart way, because it wasn't something thrown in everybody's face and said, you have to make a decision today, because that makes it easy to say no. But when you see the communities cooperate, and you see people work together, and you see, what's happened to date, I think it's going to happen. Period.
Thank you.
Okay, Sue.
I'll ask about your capacity to commit to being part of this committee, because it's over the summer months. Any issue or concerns?
No, I'll be here.
Okay.
It's not. I mean, I kind of have a problem with 3-hour meetings, that kind of thing. That's why I never ran for selectman again. but I have time.
We're anticipating maybe 1 or 2 per month for a few months.
Sure. Yeah.
Or for a while. Okay, great. Anybody have other questions for Tom? Irene?
Several years ago, we signed an MOU that set up the structure of this committee with 2 select board members, 2 village trustees, and 1 outside consultant. In hindsight, I'm wondering if we should have had more outside consultants. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I don't consider myself an outside consultant. I mean, you know, my training is all experience. And, you know, I've been at this a long time, and I like to think that, you know, I've learned the ins and outs of the business. But as far as like Paul O'Leary is, and, you know, he's a trained engineer, and his background is more of a consulting type thing than mine is. But I don't know. I think it's probably okay with one.
You're a little outnumbered, right, with people who are elected officials.
Pardon me?
What I'm,
Oh,
you're
no,
slightly
yeah.
over.
No, but, you know, the greater the size of the committee, the harder it is to get the detail.
Sure.
You know, you can do, like the TGIA committee was 27 people and long meetings. And we did all the broad brush, but, you know, as far as actually a committee that size actually getting down to the nitty gritty, it would have been very, very difficult to do.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Andy? No, you good? Okay, Mike, any other questions?
No, I'm good, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, all right. Then I'm going to say again, thank you once again, Tom.
Okay.
Really appreciate that. So the process will be, we're going to have an executive session at the end of the meeting where we'll have a discussion about the candidates. It will come out of executive session to make a decision. And then tomorrow, somebody from Pat's office will give you a call and let you know what the verdict was.
I think you got very, very good. The other candidates are all very well qualified, so I have
Thank you.
no
We're very
problem.
excited about
I have
all
no
four of you.
problem with what you decide to do.
Yeah, it's going to make our work difficult to decide, but that's a good thing.
Yep.
So thank you again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Tom.
good night. Okay, now Justin's going to come in at 7:30
Well-
about, hopefully. And if he doesn't and we move on to the next item of business, it would be good if we can agree to have him interviewed after that item. Do we need a motion for that?
It's going to be late. No,
Yeah. Okay,
sorry. two
So, everybody
conversations
good with
at the
that?
same time.
okay. Okay, yeah, we're ready. Yep, bring in Dick. Hello, Dick, if you want to take a seat right over there by that mic, we'd appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for being willing to come here tonight and to be considered for a member of this Public Works Evaluation Committee. So thank you. If you could give us a bit of your background, your understanding, your experience with Public Works operations, and maybe a little bit about why you'd like to be considered to be on this committee.
Okay. I'm a lifelong Chittenden County resident. I was born and raised in Burlington. Then I moved to Essex, and I've been here ever since 1969. I work for the Agency of Transportation. I've worked there since 1969, so that's 48 years. People ask me, well, why haven't I retired? I enjoy what I'm doing.
That's great.
And in my position as District Project Manager over here in District 5, and for those of you not familiar with District 5, we cover most of Addison County, all of Chittenden County except Westford, and part of Washington County. And we have 52 municipalities that we deal with. And as District Project Manager, I deal with all those towns. And I really enjoy it. We work with them on grants, which you folks have seen. We work with them on problems. We help them out with hydraulic reports for whatever. And unfortunately, we have to deal with them when we have a FEMA event. Fortunately, we haven't had one for, I won't even say how long.
Okay.
I don't want
Don't jinx it.
Don't want to jinx it. And so I'm dealing with the public works people in these towns. And it's interesting because I deal with public works of the size of Burlington or town road crews the size of Warren. And they're totally different issues. For example, Burlington, because of their structure, they've got engineers. They've got technicians, so
I don't deal with them a lot, but the major thing I dealt with them was when they had it was Memorial Day 4 years ago, Manhattan Drive. They had a major problem over there. So I dealt with them on that, and that was quite interesting because there was not FEMA money with it. There was federal highway money because it's a federal highway system that failed. And they were great to deal with. This was something they had no clue, as most towns do when FEMA comes to town. They don't know what the rules are. We usually have to refresh ourselves on the rules. So dealing with Burlington, for example, or dealing with Warren are totally different, but they're a lot of fun. I have not dealt with the wastewater side of Public Works because we don't have, of the 50 some odd, there's not that many that have that. And that's a different part. That's more A&R than it is V-Trans. I deal with towns with paving, with structures grants. The towns applied, or the village actually applied for a structures grant for the bridge right over here. And I was glad I was able to give it to them.
Thank you.
But that was an example where the bridge inspectors came down on a normal inspection, took one look underneath and said, oh, we got a problem. So I was able to work with, actually worked with Dennis and Aaron, and they took it from there to get the temporary fix done. And it really makes you feel good when those things happen. Sometimes we don't have such a good relationship. We've got a couple of towns, they'll be nameless, that they think they should get a grant every year. And if I had the money, I'd give it to them every year. But so that's, what my background is. What I see too with Public Works, in those communities that have water systems, the water systems are old. And the water systems are not healing themselves. And this is one area where it seems to be not pushed under the rug, but it's not top priority to dig up the road and replace a water system that is 50, 60 years old. Some they don't want to do it because it's got asbestos pipe. Others don't want to do it because it's very expensive. What do you do with all the residents and businesses in that stretch when you shut the water off? You have to put the temporary in. So, why do I would like to be on this committee? I've lived in both the village and the town. I think it's a great place to live, and from what I understand of what the system would be, sounds like it's a good way of saving taxpayer money and using resources from one and resources from the other to complement each other. And I think that it's a good opportunity for both communities, and I'd love to be on the committee.
Excellent. Good. Thanks for that background. So I'll open it up to questions from the Select Board. Who would like to go first? Mike, do you have any questions for Dick?
Yep, I'd like to ask my question again, Mr. Hosking. First of all, thank you for your willingness to step up and be considered for this. We appreciate it very much. I'm wondering what your take has been on the consolidation efforts to date, realizing that you're going to be assessing these as we move forward. I'd just like an idea of what you think the success or the shortcomings of consolidation to date have brought.
Well, of course, I'm looking at it from just a citizen, but with some interaction between the two communities. And for example, when I talked about the bridge out here and where Dennis and Aaron helped out the village, but I noticed, like, for example, this past winter, here's a town sidewalk plow in the village. And I noticed the village plowing a bit of town sidewalk over on 117, where it doesn't make any sense to stop at the village town line, turn around, and somebody's got to come down for a quarter of a mile. So, from what I have seen, I've seen things that look promising. Monetarily wise, I, of course, don't know, because I'm not involved with that.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you.
Sue?
Just curious, have you served on any community committees before?
I was on the Cirque Highway committee when it first started. In fact, we were at the top of Lincoln Hall. And that's the only committee type that I've been on for municipalities.
In a like committee team environment, what role do you tend to play?
I would hope that the team would have somebody to keep the team focused, but not designating things for each person, that the team is a team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we do in my job. I have 4 technicians, myself was 3, and we work as a team. If somebody is overwhelmed on something, one of the team members just jumps in and takes over. I was on vacation last week, and I haven't heard any problems. I looked at my email and I see where Ashley jumped in on a couple of things that I would have normally done. That's the type of team that I would hope that this would be.
Okay. Irene?
Back when this team was spec'd out in an MOU from 2015, it was decided that there would be 2 select board members, 2 village trustees, and 1 outside consulted person. In hindsight, I'm wondering if that is too few outsiders on a committee. What do you think about that? Do you feel overwhelmed, I guess is my question.
Not knowing who the municipalities would be on and their background, I think it's all right. I think that the team, the committee, what we would want to call it, would, if they wanted some more information, would go out and get it
I would hope so.
from another party.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? All good? Mike, any other questions from you?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, Dick, again, thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming tonight. And so the process will be that at the end of our meeting tonight, the public part of it, we're going to go into executive session where we'll have a discussion about the 4 excellent candidates that have come forward. And then we'll come out of executive session, make a decision, and then tomorrow somebody from Pat's office will let you know what the verdict was.
Okay.
But it's made our job very difficult because of the 4 that are stepped forward, which is a good thing. So, but thank you.
I don't envy you.
Thank you. And you're welcome to stay the rest of the meeting or head on out. It's your choice.
I just got back from the weekend in Maine, and I've got unpacking to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Okay. So, Justin's not here, so get. Oh, he is? Oh, awesome. Perfect. We're just bringing Justin in, Mike.
Yeah,
Hi there,
I
Justin.
prefer- Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to take a seat by the microphone there, thank you. Please. First, again, thank you for coming here tonight and for being willing to step forward and be considered for a member of this committee, of the Public Works Evaluation Committee. So what we'd like is just some background about you. Your understanding or working with public works operations, and then a bit about why you'd like to be considered for the committee.
Great. All right. Hello, my name is Justin Rabidou. My family, we're 10-year residents of the village. We live over on Wilkinson Drive in one of Mr. Bartlett's neighborhoods. And for my entire professional career, so a month out of college, so for the last 21 years, I've been working in local government. I was a staff engineer with the city of Burlington for a decade. I was the public works director and town engineer in Stowe for 4 years, and for the past 7 years, until, as we speak, I'm the public works director and city engineer in South Burlington. Particularly in my last 7 years at the director level, I've been involved in labor negotiations, budgeting. My department's budget alone is roughly $13 million. So I get access to all sides of both public works, but also bigger picture city planning, municipal level, administrative level issues, transportation planning, land use planning. In terms of why I want to do this, where my wife and I are we volunteer when we can. I served on, I believe it was phase 2 or 3, or the last phase of the police station committee with Dan Karen, and I believe Irene attended just about all those meetings. My wife in her field donates her time to a variety of causes and kind of on a pro bono basis. At work, I was on the joint RPC and MPO merger committee. If you remember back when they were separate entities, I served on the committee. I have been a representative to both the CWD and CSWD Board of Commissioners, presently CWD. I'm a standing member, as is Dennis Lutz, of the Transportation Advisory Committee for the RPC. And I could, you've been doing this for 21 years, I could go on and on with all the various committees I've served on. As someone who, 10 years is a long time, but it's really not a long time in terms of the history of Essex. And as someone who still struggles at various levels, understanding town, village, this, that, when do I vote, where do I vote, I think the discussion about consolidation of services is a very valuable discussion. And it's, I think with my experience, I can bring a lot of understandings of both operations, labor negotiations, budgeting, capital planning, to those discussions. All the other folks that you've interviewed, I happen to know them all professionally. They'd all be wonderful additions to what you're considering doing here. When I arrived in Stowe, they had just merged village and town, and you could there was that forming, storming, norming, performing. Well, there was a lot of storming in probably my first couple of years there, but eventually. Charles Safford, who most of you probably know, under the steady hand of Charles, people started to realize that maybe this wasn't the worst thing in the world, and maybe there's a way to do this properly. So I've lived through it professionally, albeit on the back end of it. I wasn't on the ground floor. But I do think it's valuable for Essex to consider providing value services to its members, both from a cost standpoint, but also just from a logistical one. The mystery of the two Essexes is one that, if it wasn't so confounding, I think it would be easier. Frankly, I think the government and the budgets would be easier to understand and approach. There's a lot of questions about school consolidation with what's the calendar. So this is occurring at multiple levels within Essex. And to the extent that I think that we can check off an additional box in creating a higher level of understanding and certainty from the taxpayers, customers, there's benefit to that. However, if in the end it's determined that for whatever reason, that's not the direction, that would be a sufficient outcome as long as it's given its due process. And I think the agreement from 2015 outlines a very good process in terms of trying it for a couple of years, creating separate line items and budgets, and then finally for perhaps FY19 implementation, perhaps then having an actual proposal to put forward.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Open up to questions from the board. Mike's been starting off. Mike, do you want to start off again?
Well, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, sure. We'll end. First of all, Justin, thank you very much for your willingness to be considered for this. It sounds like you've been really busy, and we appreciate the time and the expertise that you can bring to this. So thank you. I'm interested to know of all of the candidates, so I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the other three, and that is, having having been able to watch consolidation efforts to date as a resident, I'm interested to know your assessment so far, what the positives have been and what the shortcomings have been in our efforts to date.
Yeah, the type of answers I might get one in trouble. But, I think the shortcomings are always, and it's always going to be a shortcoming because people are only engaged when it really is of concern to them, and it's often too late, as we're seeing in a lot of the Five Corners discussion. If you really care about this stuff, you got to be democracy's for the diligent. You got to be on the ground floor. I'll take the recent recreation proposal. The creation of another separate municipal entity was, I think, enough to scare folks. You probably had a large percent of people that were in favor of a merger, but not one that resulted in another separate entity with its own board of decision makers and taxing authority. So in terms of what I thought about that, I thought that I was someone who was in favor of the thought of consolidation. I don't know if that was perhaps the best way to deliver that result, however. I think the school stuff, which I understand, the divisions between school and municipal, that's going pretty well. The school's doing their best to at least hold hearings, even on things like busing. They're not pretending to have all the answers. They're listening to the community, and hopefully that input is being heard. I think what we've done here with Pat having budgeting authority and then eventually, ultimately, perhaps personnel authority, so you're not going to have this village employees, town employees, kind of who's in charge, a confusing looking org chart. That can be successful if there's labor buy-in. And having sat at labor negotiations through, 4 or 5 different contract cycles, I have a decent idea. I understand the workforce here is AFSCME, I believe. That was what I was in Burlington. I negotiated with IBEW and Stowe, and in South Burlington they just have a local association, I believe, just like the village employees do. They're just an association without national representation. But I get back to Michael's question. It's just communication. That's where it, and people aren't going to, they're not going to care as much if the message is positive and if it's about the bottom line. Everyone always thinks the panacea, and the unfortunate thing for folks like you is the public's perception of consolidation is it's always going to mean a lower tax rate. Well, maybe, but it has to be done right. So if we can be out ahead of that message.
Good. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
That's my question.
Sure.
Just curious, the work of this committee wraps up, or is hoping to wrap up by September 1st. So that means any meetings will be taking place in June, July, August. Any concerns or
I believe the
meeting the
police.
commitment
I
of
believe
the-
the police station committee I served on. We met. Maybe we might have skipped Thanksgiving week, but we met like 20 weeks in a row. So, other than the fact that people take vacations in the summer, myself included, I might have to miss a meeting if it's during that 1 week. But no, I've already done that, and I think probably at a higher level than this committee will require for a longer period of time. We literally met I think it was every Thursday for
Ever.
months and months and months. So that is not a concern. And as someone also in my profession, or in what we all do, I understand. I'm at my municipal meetings all the time, so I understand that's how it works, and that's what's required of it.
Great. Okay, other questions from Irene?
You mentioned the MOU from 2015. At that point, the review committee was set up with 2 select board members, 2 village trustees, and 1 outside technical agent. Are you going to feel outnumbered? Should we have put more people like you on that committee versus elected officials? Just curious.
I think a general answer to that is committee dynamics can be difficult if there is a strong representation from elected officials. There's often the sense, implied or otherwise, that there's carried weight in what these elected officials have to say. That statement is not my direct thoughts on what this proposal is, but having seen this work well and not work well, sometimes that makeup can be delicate, particularly if now you're bringing, in this case, members of perhaps disparate bodies who might not be in line, as opposed to, I don't know, Joe Citizen, myself. So I always, when I saw that makeup, it struck me as, my 1/5 of a vote feels like 1/10 perhaps. Not that I'm advocating we went through form-based code in South Burlington. It was a 23-person committee. One of the most miserable things you could ever imagine. I'm sure Greg understands the planning world and how fun that was. 2 years.
Ouch. Okay, any other questions? Andy? Anything? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Mike, are you good?
I am good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So, Justin, again, thank you for stepping forward to be considered for this. It's an impressive background. We do have 4 excellent candidates, and it's going to make our decision difficult, which is good. But the process is that at the end of our open meeting, we're going to go into executive session.
Sure.
We'll have deliberations. We'll come out of executive session to make a decision. And then somebody from Pat's office will let you know tomorrow what that decision was.
Great.
Okay?
I just noticed on my notes, if I may add one omission.
Sure.
I mentioned how my wife and I both try to volunteer in our professional lives. Also in our personal lives, we're active in the St. Lawrence Holy Family community. Essex Eats Out, we serve on, this coming Friday, June 9th, at the Holy Family Pear Center. It's our turn to host Essex Eats Out. Help Your Neighbor Day, the Christmas pageant on Christmas Eve at St. Michael's College. So we're also very active in that realm as well in terms of volunteerism. And we take it seriously, the ability to be able to volunteer.
Wonderful. That's how the
Thank you.
communities work. So thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, then as part of this business item, we still need to have 2 select board members appointed to this 5-member committee. There'll be 2 select board members, 2 trustees, and 1 public works technical agent. So is there any interest on being on that?
Can I ask if anybody has conflicts of interest? Are you allowed to be on something like this, Andy?
Uh,
Before we start considering you?
It depends on the subjects that are discussed. When Dennis talked about this, one of the things that he commented on was that the committee should also propose future actions. And the one thing that would cause my employer concern with regard to possible perception of conflict of interest would be establishing a process for prioritizing capital projects, especially if consideration to economic development is included in that discussion. So because of the possibility of that subject being discussed by this committee, my employer has expressed preference that I not participate in this committee.
Pat, can you?
Yes, let's recognize where we are in our 3-year agreement and what the work is likely to be in year 3. In year 3, we will be talking about capital projects and also the utilities. What you'll be asked to do as a member of the select board and a member of the committee will be to evaluate what we've done thus far. So therefore, we haven't touched capital projects. The village has a capital committee, interesting committee. It makes decisions and recommendations both to the manager and the trustees. That has not been discussed whatsoever at this point. And the capital projects in the town originate, and most of the work is done by the staff until it gets to the select board level. That is not being considered as a consolidated area for consolidation until next year. So I would say that your employer would have nothing to worry about, but I don't recommend that you say something that will get you in trouble with your employer. But I doubt that that's going to come up in any way, manner, shape, or form that would get you in a potential conflict. Except that if you talk about budgets, you may say, well, there is a capital budget process that in Essex it concludes shortly before town meeting, and in the village it goes further on. But their committee in the village ranks all the projects, and Dennis Lutz and Doug Fisher work on that in concert with the selectmen. But so if I were sitting in your seat, and it's easy for me to say this, I might not be too concerned. Your employer shouldn't be too concerned about you having any ranking authority over capital projects.
No, it wasn't ranking of the projects. It's the recommendation of the process by which the prioritization would be done.
You won't be talking
And so,
about
so that was, I mean, that was one of the, I recall, and perhaps I'm recalling incorrectly, Dennis saying that he was recommending a two-part project for this committee to, evaluate what's happened to date and then also make a recommendation for what should happen next.
You're recalling correct.
And he did include
He did say
capital projects in that discussion. Yeah.
But that was his desire.
Right.
That was his wish. That wasn't what the workload is going to be for this committee, and he's stepping away from it. And as well he should. And I don't know if there's going to be a staff person there, but I'm seeking somebody to take the minutes so that we don't lose anything. So, again.
And so if the discussion about developing a capital prioritization process is off the table for this committee, then I can participate, yes.
Right. And if the word capital comes up by mistake, just excuse yourself from the.
Yeah, my concern with that is then shortchanging representation.
Sure. Well, I'm just trying to
I
iron out the sheets of the
Yep.
the issue.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, is anyone, again, we're looking for two people. Anybody have interest? I mean?
I'm looking for some diversity on this committee. We've just interviewed 4 men, which is great. I believe there's a man and a woman from the village, is that true, who've already been tasked with serving? Can you verify that?
I'm sorry, I
village
don't
manager?
understand the question.
I'm looking for some diversity on this committee. I believe there's a male and a female right now from the village, is that true?
Yes, Elaine Sobchak and Andrew Brown.
And what I take from these 4 interviews is that we will have a man filling the outside technical contact. And I would at least ask them that we have a man and a woman from the select board appointed to make sure that we represent visibly the people we're representing in town and village.
It's your call.
Well, first we
Mr.
need
Chairman.
Yes, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I'm interested in serving on that committee.
Okay. Okay, we got one. Do we have anybody else?
I think in the interest of diversity, I'm interested in serving as well.
Is there anybody else? Andy, does that concern you about what you heard with your employer? Does it sound like you had an interest, and I just want to know that before.
Yeah. So how do I say this? So, as I said, if the topic of developing a process for prioritizing capital projects is off the table, then yeah, I'd be interested in doing it. I know Mike is very interested, and if we go to a situation where it's we want to have boys and girls on here, then I would defer to Mike to be the male on the committee.
So, I'm hearing two things. Sounds like you want to be, then you're not sure, but so I just.
Well,
need
I'm
to
not
get
sure
that-
how we're going to make the choice here. Are we going to vote, or how are we going to,
It's volunteer.
or is it a volunteer thing? Yeah, are we?
Well, we could do it. What's the pleasure of the board? If we have 3, we could do it.
Then I'll back away and let Mike and Sue do it then.
Okay. Okay, Irene,
Works for me.
works for you. Okay. That's fine for me.
It's good.
Okay, so we got it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Sue, and thank you, Mike. Okay, we're
Thank
good.
you, Sue.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, so then we're going to move on to the next item of business, which is 5B, and we do strongly urge we do that in executive session, the discussion of the 4 excellent candidates. Okay, everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay. So let's move on to business item 5C, and human service funding. So, let's see, who's doing that one?
I guess it's me.
By default, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have the memo in front of you. You had the packet a meeting or two ago. Our policy, the town's policy, is 1% of the general fund budget to human service organizations. That 1% for FY17 is $131,829. We received requests for $133,072, $1,243 over the total appropriation. The manager's recommendation is for $131,829, and you have the list of recommendations basically on the attached sheet.
Okay, thank you, Doug. So, comments, questions, concerns? Andy?
On the Essex Jericho Underhill Ecumenical Ministry food shelves request form, my name is listed as a board member. Since I've been on the select board, I have been a non-voting member of that board, so I just wanted to make clear that, and I no longer submit the paperwork for them. That had been my role in the past, but just to state that my name's on that application, but I didn't fill it out, and I don't vote on anything that they do. So
Okay, so you're basically ex officio, I guess.
ex officio,
would be the
ex officio
term.
member, correct.
Okay, good to know. Full disclosure. Thank you. Okay, any other concerns on this? Sue?
Just
Hold on, Mike. Sue, raise your hand, then I'll come to you, okay?
You can go.
you got it.
All right. Question on the VNA. I know that there's some, squirrely thing with what we're including here is actually for the next fiscal year. Is that the way it works? What was for fiscal year 17 was already committed. This is fiscal year 18. Is that what's in here?
Oh, can you explain that one? It's always
That is always, and I apologize, I did not look it up this year to tell you what the number is. I can go get that.
Well, it says it here, actually. It says 50,497 for fiscal year 17, 53,572 for fiscal year 18. So, I'm assuming, so the number that's in the table is the fiscal year 18 number.
Correct, and that being the case, then we didn't have request in excess of, because that 53, I believe, is part of the 133,000, and really we're only giving them 50,000 this year. So, good catch. Bad on our part.
So what's the number then that should go in there?
So basically the request is to approve 53,000 for them next year, but in fiscal 17 we've only given them 50,000. So if you add up the column for fiscal 17 where it adds up to 133,000, I believe that includes the 53, not the 50. In which case the total of 133 given out in fiscal 17 will be actually less.
So we could.
Yeah.
So we could bring up the two that you
that we reduced.
reduced.
Yes, you could.
Okay, that's good news.
But I would like to go and run a tape on
Okay.
this real quick before I tell you can give away more money. And my apologies for the snafu. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there were two that didn't get fully funded, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
One is a brand new one that requested $1,000. It's the Gold Star Mothers Pet Project. Blue Star Mothers Pet Project.
And that's the only vet one in here, I think, isn't it?
Speaking as a vet, yes, I noticed that too.
So I'd certainly like to see that get fully funded if we can do it. At least that would be my request.
Yeah, and I guess my other comment was, I think Andy, you put this together, the
Yeah.
prioritization.
Yep.
And, the VNA, I know there's history there, but it just seems kind of out of whack because it's, a huge chunk of the budget and it is serving the, not that it's not an important category, but from a priority perspective, what appears to be the lowest priority.
It's an aging population, and they serve a critical need. And they were actually, I think, when this first started, right? Weren't they the?
They were the first.
They were the first one, and that's kind of what kicked this off, right?
I think they
support
were.
of the VNA?
You know, my ancient history isn't as good as it used to be, but yes. And in fact, before Andy was even on the board, we had these discussions in the grocery stores, and then right here in this room, as to how the VNA came to be the largest beneficiary. They serve the most people. It was put them here or make them a line item in the budget, and the fact that the request is always in arrears, I think is also slightly helpful. If they were not, I mean, I would hate to think of what this would be without their involvement, even at a reduced level. I don't know how much they depend upon all the other communities that contribute, but it is a large portion of our overall 1%.
So just to, they aren't, I mean, from what is listed here,
Yes.
they are not serving the most of any of the groups. And I'm also curious, it was recently announced that they are somehow being brought into the University of Vermont Medical Center in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if that's been publicly shared. In terms
Hopefully
of
that
how-
means more money coming to them so that we could reconsider the involvement. Yes, I hear exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, we've had them come here and talk to us. That's probably before you on the board. And they covered all the services they do in our community. And they also looked at the amount of money that they spend on this community, and this doesn't even cover it, right? So we get more out of it than what we're paying.
I'm not discounting that I'm very familiar with the VNA. I've actually volunteered over there, but I'm just questioning the size of the piece of the pie, and based on the work that was done here, is it in line with what the mission of these dollars are?
My take is, again, since this 1% got kicked off, and the VNA was I don't know if it was the only one, but it was one of two.
It was one
right?
of,
One very
Essex
few.
Rescue and a few others.
Yeah.
But I think Sue's question on the mission, it was human services, and I don't know that at the very beginning there was a description of what those would be. It'd be providing help to, or providing service to Essex residents that couldn't or were not yet in the operational budget. And the state does some of it, and the rest of it was left to regional resources. So I think we're still the only community in Chittenden County that has a fixed 1% commitment from our annual budget. I think the rest go as part of the budget process every year. I think. But so the mission, I don't think the mission has changed. I think the evaluation of what population is served by the money that we distribute is what Andy put together. I think a universal approach would best be provided for the nurses, because the people that they receive are individuals, and they could be in any one of those categories. But that's all I got.
Andy.
And just to be clear, this prioritization, again, is my assessment. It's all completely biased by my past, my history. And we don't actually have a policy that says we do anything with this information. I think this is more a request on my
It's
part.
to help you make your decision.
It's information that I share with the community. It's not our policy to necessarily choose who gets funded based on this, but it's
to help inform.
It's my attempt to share information. Yeah.
You've done good work on that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you doing that, Andy. Thank you. All right.
So my notes from last year say that the order of these categories comes from the UVM Community Health Survey issues ranking. Is that still true?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't redo it this year. That ranking is done every 3 years, and so there's no new data to look at. So I didn't update the ranking.
So what you've personally added is the interpretation of how these fit into those
Right.
categories.
I
that come
read
from UVM.
through. Yeah, I read through the applications that were provided by the agencies and did my own assessment of what populations they serve. In some cases, I went to websites to look as well. I did see, though, that the Ethan Allen Residence, which is also a new agency here, does serve a number of veterans also. So I think that's another veteran organization. One other comment I guess I want to make is Essex Meals on Wheels didn't ask for any, and it's my understanding I got a letter from them just a couple of days ago saying that they have consolidated with Age Well, CVAA, so they're the same organization now. So I think that's why they didn't ask for funding, because we're also funding.
So I wonder why they
Age Well.
didn't.
Yeah,
I saw that
they're
in the news.
they've
Who did they merge with, Andy?
it's Age Well. They're called Age Well now. It was CVAA, the
On the top of the
agency
list.
Agency of Aging.
Yep. Okay, that was my question, Mr. Chairman, so you can take me off of whatever list you might have forgotten.
So,
I just had a question on the Meals on Wheels, because I also did see that in the news that Essex Meals on Wheels merged with Age Well, and I assumed that was why they didn't ask. But I also made a note that the last one on the list, Vermont Center for Independent Living, has a program called Meals on Wheels, and I wasn't sure how that overlapped with Essex Meals on Wheels, or whether it complemented, or I wasn't sure what the difference was. Does anybody know?
Yeah, I don't know, but I do know that the VNA also supports Meals on Wheels. So there's a number of organizations that
with some overlap.
there's some overlap. Yeah.
Doug, what'd you come up with?
In the least Fisher-like method possible. If you go down the funding request under FY17,
Okay.
the number next to Visiting Nurse Association should be $52,012. That is what we have paid them this year.
Great.
Okay, so that would bring the correct total request to $131,512, which is $317 less than the money available of $131,829. So if you choose, I guess management recommend, the manager recommends giving everyone their requested amount, and then you folks can decide on the extra $317. And maybe to Age Well, since they're taking over for Meals on Wheels.
Thoughts on that? So that's fully funding the request under FYE 17, and then the extra 317 to be either not spent or added to perhaps Age Well, since it merged with Essex Meals on Wheels. Anybody have issue with that? Mike?
I think if I understood you, well, I'm not sure I did. So
Okay.
read one more time, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
The new recommendation is to fully fund the organization's FYE 17 funding request. And then with there's $317 remaining of that 1% that we put towards this. We can either not spend it, or the recommendation would be to add it to Age Well, which is at the top, since Essex Meals on Wheels went from 1,000 to 0, and Age Well kept flat at 6,000. We were thinking to add it to Age Well.
I support that. I support that.
Okay. I support that as well. Anybody else? Issues?
I would just add that I read that the Howard Center in the news was hugely short on meeting their budgets, and they were
200.
knocking 2 employees off of their payroll, so that would be another potential place to put that excess.
Howard Center, they've asked for 6,000 as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, they were about, what, 200,000 short, I think, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's a
Yeah,
lot.
they're going,
A lot.
Yeah.
They were a lot short.
okay.
And based on the numbers here, at least, they are the one that's serving the most Essex residents.
Right, and I applaud that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, does this mean that Blue Star Mothers is going to get fully funded?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they, instead of 257, they could go up to 1,000.
very
Okay.
good.
So everybody okay then, fully funded, but we'll add the 317 to the Howard Center because we know that they do have that, that
That would be my
deficit.
preference.
Yeah, no, I think that's good for me.
No, I like that.
Okay, Andy? Good? Okay.
Yeah.
So then, like, do we need a motion for this? I presume? Okay, Andy.
I move approval of the manager's recommendation, or the funding, fully funding the funding request fiscal year ending 17 with the following changes: that Visiting Nurse Association be funded to $52,012, and the Howard Center for Human Services be funding at $63,17.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. And any further discussion on this? Okay, I saw Sue's first.
Just the question on how and when do we have an opportunity to discuss the VNA's next year commitment? Because
That would be now.
right now, okay.
We could invite
Is
them
it-
in here again, right, to give us a presentation about what they do. Would that be helpful? Because you haven't sat through that, right?
volunteered on that.
I've been,
Oh, you
I am
volunteered
very
there. Okay,
familiar with them,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
No, but if we're, like, we don't have the chance to talk about it at the same time that we talk about everybody else's, right? So,
The intent is, yes, as you're approving these, to give your approval to their request for next year's number.
Even though at this-
Poorly worded in the recommendation. I
and
apologize.
at this point, we don't even know what that 1% figure is for next, I mean, we could
Right.
guess.
Won't know till after town meeting.
But we have their number for FY18, is what you're saying.
We know what the number's going to be for FY18.
We have that projection.
We've approved the
For
budget.
18.
yeah.
Yeah, we've approved.
We know what the 1% is, and this is VNA's request for next year. So you could say, no, we don't want to give that next year. We're,
What is the 1% figure for next year?
The approved budget town meeting times 1% is $130-something thousand. About 134. What is it this year? 131. About 134, $135,000 for next year. Round numbers. So this, the proportionate spending against the folks who from the agencies would be approximately what this is. And we don't see too many shifts over the years. There was discussion many years ago, maybe we should advertise that we have this money or do another thing to get a broader sense, but this is what seems to be coming up with one or two exceptions along the way each year. And Howard may be going out of business. So let's say if that's a terrible thing that happens, and I don't know that they are or they aren't. I'm just saying,
Gosh, I'd hope not.
if Howard goes out of
Yeah.
business, then it frees up a lot of money. Or if the nurses get funded by the hospital or something, that would free up a lot of money as well.
Yeah, so if something like that were to happen after we've already committed that money for next year, we wouldn't have a chance to adjust that. Is that true? I mean,
Well, we're only spending this year's money this year. So
if more information comes out about
Yes, you will have a
University of
chance.
Vermont Medical Center and VNA and
yes.
Yeah, we should keep our finger on that pulse for sure.
Yeah, and then in the budget, when we go through the budget deliberations this upcoming winter, just, somebody said, hey, don't forget the 1%, and do we know of any changes thus far? Because you're not going to make that decision until you want to have your discussions about these agencies after you finish the budget, because you'll have a number, and you'll have a couple of months, 2 or 3 months in advance to do so if you're so inclined. That's all I got.
Okay. Irene, you had a comment too?
Yeah, I was just looking at a
And then I'll
couple
go to you,
of
Andy.
these. The Blue Star Mothers, for example, and another one. It was Ethan Allen residents don't currently have an outside audit performed. And so I just think that, for good best practice in the future, maybe we should suggest they get an outside audit.
Well, Blue Star is new
Blue Star
this year.
and Ethan Allen residents don't have records of outside auditors helping them, and I just think, for everyone's sake, an outside audit is a really good thing to do every once in a while, so maybe we could suggest to them that that's something we'll be looking for next year. Give them a year's heads up, but
If there's, yes, I know what you're saying.
it's Vermont after all. Embezzlement happens every day. We keep reading in the news. I don't want this to, be
Also,
something we encourage.
Essex Chips says NA for year of latest audit.
Yeah. I don't know, I think there's a limit before an audit is necessary. There's a certain dollar amount, so I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, I don't. I guess the comment is, it's unless the IRS requires it, can we force them to have an outside audit? I wouldn't think so.
So you can use it as a criteria.
Because the comment is on some, I thought, was not yet required, because they don't. I mean,
They just started.
yeah, I forgot to bring my other documentation. I went and looked up how much money all these organizations have in the bank.
Yeah. I think there's a budgetary limit when one is required. Doug, do you happen to know what that would be?
I believe the requirement for whether an audit is usually set by either the organization, like in our case, it's part of state law, or basically by the funding mechanism. If you're funded by grants, federal or state, then there would be a requirement where it would kick in. At the federal level, you're talking $500,000 before a single audit kicks in. But towns are still required to have audits done. Some of these smaller agencies, I don't think, if their full funding is donations from folks, if it's not within their internal bylaws that they will have an external audit done, there may not be a requirement. It could be something that we require as a condition of giving this money. Right. I would be hesitant on some of these smaller ones. The cost of an external audit would probably be in excess of some of their budgets. But point is well taken. What we can do is try and institute with some of these folks a little bit better communication with them on what their practices are. I don't want to get into auditing them ourselves either.
No, not at all.
Let's also let's also recognize that Irene mentioned the E word, embezzlement. Audits do not prevent embezzlement, so let's understand that. And when an audit is done, they don't audit every single transaction in the organization. They just pick a couple, and they test the money coming in, money going out, how much recorded, is there more than one person reviewing it. So we can, I think at best, require you require that you folks evaluate based upon the information that they provide with the size of their budget, number of their employees, and that kind of stuff, whether or not you want to give them money if they do not have an audit. So that can be my recommendation, to look at audits. But Irene, you raise a good point, and every agency, PASSA, for example, the Health Trust, they serve so many small communities that they simply can't afford to do an audit every year. Some have to do it once every 3, 4, or 5 years. So it's an ongoing problem.
Any other comments, Andy?
Yeah, do I need to modify the motion to include approval of next year's VNA funds?
That would be helpful.
That's what I thought. So, I guess the friendly amendment to add approval of the of $53,572 for fiscal year ending 18 for the VNA.
Okay, and Irene, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we have a friendly amendment to that. Any further discussion on the motion? So the motion is to fully fund the Human Services Organization as requested for funding request FYE 17, with the exception of Howard Center for Human Services being funded at $6,317, and Visiting Nurse Association for FYE 17 being funded at $52,012, and for FYE 18 at $53,572. Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you all. Any people out there, thank you as well, I'm sure. Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mike.
I think you have to do votes by roll call.
Well, only if it's not unanimous. Did you vote?
Oh, no, I voted for.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
That's a new
Okay.
rule, I guess, right?
Yeah, the law says that if it's unanimous, fine, but if it's not, then you must do roll call. But it's better to check for sure. Thank you.
Yep, I misunderstood, sorry.
No problem. Okay, so the next item is approval of the AFSCME contract. That will for sure be an executive session, so we'll talk about that. All right, is there any comments you want to say about that in open meeting here?
No, we have reached tentative agreement with the union and would like to discuss that, and that requires executive session.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
just want to say I didn't mean to be sounding so didactic on the audits, because it's just a topic near and dear to my heart. Sorry.
Okay, the next item, I think, Andy, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think you'd like to see the review of communications policy pulled out of consent. Is that true?
Yes, I think we should have that discussion before we appoint somebody to another survey committee.
Okay, so yes, so I will need a motion then to take item 6C out of consent agenda and move it into our business item following business item 5D.
Point of order, shouldn't that have been done under 2 rather than now?
Yeah, it should have.
Okay.
But it can be done now if we approve.
We'll just cure it.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any further discussion about moving the review of communications policy from consent agenda item 6C to follow business item 5D? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that one passes 5-0, so...
My apologies, Mr. Chair. That was my intention. I simply forgot to mention it.
Okay, so if we can grab that from consent. Okay, so Andy, your name's listed there. Are you okay
Yeah, how about
doing
that?
this one?
Okay, so let's see.
I think it was your request to do that, right?
Yeah, I did request that we discuss this. I know that when we, the prior study committee for the rec governance, there were a lot of issues that came up around communications. I just thought it would be inappropriate to review this. I think the version that we have was signed 2015, so we haven't made any updates in a couple of years. And although I believe we did review it last year without making any changes. Just one, I guess, reiterate that, and this isn't necessarily directed toward the fact that we are going to appoint somebody. I just wanted to make sure that we reviewed the policy, because I think it's appropriate to do so. I guess some of the main points in here are that if a select board member is communicating in public, that they need and are expressing their own opinion, they have to make it clear that it's their own position, that it's may not necessarily be the select board's position. It says the formal positions of the select board should be referred to the chair unless another board member has been designated been designated by the body. I think unless the board has had a discussion on a topic and had either developed a consensus or voted on something, I think expressing an opinion as if it were the select board's opinion is speculation and shouldn't be done. One other thing I wanted to bring up was with regard to forms of communication that mentions email, telephone, in person. It says or otherwise. We do not include social media here. I've been in a couple of training sessions with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns where they've talked about social media, and they've expressed concern about potential open meeting law violation with regard to posting on social media. The concern being that if comments are made about town business by select board members, there's no control over whether other select board members may see that content. The assertion that they made was that you don't have to actually participate in the conversation on social media to have participated in it. You can be a passive participant in a discussion, just as you could come to a select board meeting, count as quorum, not say a word. You can also participate in a social media comment without actually responding to a comment on it. So that's where the concern is coming from. So similar to having an email that gets passed around, or having an email conversation among 3 select board members, again, you don't have to participate in the discussion to be considered part of a quorum. And so that's where the concern comes up. And so that's where I'd like, and maybe we need to discuss it, but that's the training that I've gotten is that if we're going to post on social media, it needs to be something that the select board has agreed should go on select board or on social media and would represent and explicitly state that it's the select board position, not that it's a single select board member's position.
So would you like to see the VLCT come up and do a presentation on the proper use of social media? Because I know they do that.
They do that, or they have materials that they could share with us. And I know I'd have to look through my files. I probably still have the content that they provided, but I mean the sessions are 45 minutes long typically. But I don't know if they would need to take that long to talk about this particular topic. But their concern, and I agree with it, is if somebody makes a public records request and asks for any social media contents on postings on a topic, I don't know how you're going to necessarily get them all, because they can be deleted as well. If you post something on there and then somebody objects to it and you pull it off, that can be a problem. In fact, they say that if you're going to have, it's a funny, interesting, what they say to do if you choose to have a town social media site and somebody puts something up that's offensive, you can delete it, but you have to print a copy of it and keep it on file so that you have a record of everything that was said about a particular topic. You can't just delete it. You have to actually save it. And so that was, I mean, this isn't at all related to the governance, the study committee that we're talking about, but I just think it's an important topic.
So you're looking for changes here?
So I'm looking for changes. I guess I'd like to include social media in the list of communication, be it email, telephone, in person, or otherwise. Like
Which paragraph are you at?
Oh, sorry. Second paragraph. It says any communication. It starts with any communication.
Okay.
Right at the top there. It says be it email, telephone, in person, or otherwise. I'd like to say have social media be in there as well.
And Andy, I'm sorry, where are you again, please?
So on the top of page 1, where it says Town of Essex Communications Policy, the second paragraph starts with any communication,
Yes.
and then it lists specific communication modes. I think we should add social media in there.
I couldn't agree more.
And I think, and so I think those were the, let's see, was those the only points I wanted to bring up?
So the only change you want, though, is that adding the email and social media to that second paragraph? Is that the only change? The other thing was just for awareness?
The other thing was just for awareness. I just wanted to remind folks. I think we all know that you really need to make it clear that you're if you're stating your own opinion, that you make it clear that it is your own opinion. And I guess in regard to, it says unless a board, I guess I'm not going to go any further, because I know I participated in the prior study committee, and I felt comfortable stating my opinions during that meeting, and I think anybody we appoint should feel comfortable stating their own opinions in those meetings, as long as it's clear that it's their opinion.
Okay.
I guess that's the.
Sue?
I guess
What, Mike, 1 sec. I was just calling on Sue, and then I'll do you, I'll call on you afterwards, okay?
the first point that you made, Andy, I also heard the reference to, and tell me if I'm wrong, there's the one side, which is when we're speaking our opinion, we should be clear that it's our opinion, but then there's also the other side where we shouldn't represent the board's opinion if we haven't had some sort of vote or motion or something that, and I think that piece maybe isn't in here and could be in here more clearly.
Which paragraph would you suggest?
That under the first public communication, the 1, 2, 3rd paragraph down.
Okay. And what would the recommended wording be? Do you have it?
Actually, no, it's probably the first paragraph there in select board.
So it's about speaking only on matters that the select board voted on?
Well,
Or
this paragraph
official
really is only
positions?
talking about when you are speaking your opinion, you should be clear that it is your opinion. But I think there should be some reference to if you are representing the board's, what's the word I'm looking for?
Formal position.
Formal positions right there. That's where.
Yeah, that's the third paragraph down under Public Communications Select Board. It says formal positions, other select
Yeah,
board.
but it just says should be referred to the chair. It doesn't say that.
What a formal position means? Is that what you're
No,
looking at?
I'm saying that
No formal position has been taken is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing
when
from
there
you.
hasn't been a formal position taken, there shouldn't be
Any comment?
The onus of.
a public representation that there is a formal opinion.
Yes.
Thank
Got
you.
it. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That's implied, I think, isn't it?
Well,
Where is it implied?
It says formal position, so if it's not a formal position, then it's not.
we can.
So I'm happy to make it strong. I'm just not clear what you're asking to have added.
Don't talk about stuff that hasn't been talked about at the select board level.
Thank you. That
Yeah.
you haven't received commitment from every member of the select board what their opinion is.
Okay, so you can
Yeah.
get the gist of
We'll-
that.
we'll get the gist,
Okay,
yeah.
great,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Sue. Somebody's hand was up, is that Andy?
No, I was going to comment on what
Go ahead.
has been resolved.
Okay.
So I'll.
Irene?
I'll go ahead.
Okay,
Oh,
that's right,
Mike,
Mike,
we're
you're
waiting for
next.
Mike.
Yep, thank you. Sorry, you're there. Go ahead, Mike.
Getting back to the social media place that Andy's point went to, should we assume that includes Front Porch Forum? Is that a form of social media? I would say that it is, but I guess I just wanted that clarification.
That's social media for sure.
It's either social media or email, which is,
Yeah.
it's one or the other, right?
Right.
Well, where does a letter to the editor come in? I mean, I think Front Porch Forum is more widespread, such as something in the Essex Reporter where someone's quoted or someone writes a letter. that is public communication. So it's not like you're trying to hide it because I'm calling Andy and saying, Andy, what do you think? Or Andy, this is what I think. I think these communications that we're talking about are things that could easily be hidden from the public. Maybe we need a new paragraph about communications that are obviously public about issues that the select board, as Sue was saying, have not come to a decision upon, may or may not be espoused by a select board member, because after all, they have First Amendment rights. We've been through this, right?
Oh, yeah,
So I think there's
absolutely.
material here that we could add.
To that paragraph about any communication.
I think we need to exclude certain types of communication that are obviously public, right? Which are covered in number 1.
Except for communication that's already public? You want to list those, like,
I don't know where you draw the line,
yeah.
but
That's why
that's
I
all.
said or otherwise in
Yeah.
that area,
Yeah.
because that line is,
Yeah.
and it may change
It's
with the
kinda gray.
technology. Technology changes at such a rapid pace, it's hard to keep any communication, yeah. So, I think in general, the communications policy is just as a cautionary tale
Sure.
that, I've been preaching forever that you can't take your hat off wherever you are. And, you always have to be mindful of that. And it's okay to have a different opinion than the rest of the board as long as you identify it. And we've had that discussion too. And Andy, can I ask? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Jeez.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Why don't you continue?
Do your comments beg the question that maybe we need a separate policy governing social media? Because there are lots of other issues associated with that. For example, the responsibility that the organization takes in having a Facebook page and what that implies, and people making decisions based upon information that we originate. What happens if something horrible is placed there? Yes, we can take it down, but when we see it and take it down, it may have already been other people may have already seen it and been impacted by it negatively or
But we don't have a Facebook page, right? Do we?
No, but we do. Well, we do have a Facebook page
Right.
for information at the library and Parks and Rec. But I'm saying if we do go further and beyond that, I mean, it's the whole area of our level of responsibility for information being put out can't be covered in a communications policy, but it could be restricted as to the medium that we use.
Can we see what other municipalities are doing? For
Yeah,
that?
we could.
For, if they have a separate social media policy, that might be a good place for us to start, as opposed to try to reinvent it. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yep.
The thing that I have, go ahead, Mike.
I would love to see that happen. We talked about this around other subject matter, but I would love to see what other towns are doing, because I think there's a positive and a negative to all of this. The positive is, I think it's yet another way that we can get issues that we're working on in front of the public in yet another forum that has proven to be wildly popular.
Powerful, yeah.
And powerful. The flip side of that is that I think we have to be very, very careful about when this information goes out. And by when, I'm talking about, do we wait until a formal motion has been voted on by the select board and then the public is notified, or do we make it part of a general, for lack of a better word, alert that the select board is talking about this particular subject? And I'm just going to pick one out of the air. Firearms. Is that something that belongs on a Facebook page so that we get the word out to as many people as possible that this is an issue that we're going to be addressing? I think there are definite pros and cons to both of that, but my bottom line wish would be that we take a quick straw poll of what some other towns are doing and pick up this subject again fairly quickly. I think it could be very useful to us if used the right way.
Yeah, we could see what others are doing. And in that same vein, I'd like to see what others are doing about putting any kind of teeth in here, because, yeah, First Amendment protects this, your speech. But if we're going to bother to have a policy that we expect people to follow, if there's a violation, there needs to be some type of teeth, and that teeth might be nothing more than a censure of that person, and have to be by a majority vote of the board or something to say that, yeah, they want to do that. But what I'd like to include in looking at that social media policy from other municipalities is to see what they're doing to add teeth to their policies. Are they doing censure or what, or anything?
I don't think.
I would agree. I would agree with that. You do. There has to be penalties for misuse.
At least consequences.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can put any penalties in. You can't do that.
And does it apply to this communications policy as well?
Well, we have to. If we did it, it would have to apply to all policies.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's worth seeing if any other communities are doing it, and to come up with, and maybe they're not doing it.
Certainly at the federal level, they're having a trouble with that, right?
The one technical piece, I guess, on page 1 under appointed members of board, committees, or commissions, on the 3rd line where it says relevant staff, go back to the beginning of that. It says members are encouraged to work with the relevant staff to obtain factual and complete information. Our charter requires us to go through the manager and not the staff. So shouldn't that say to work with the municipal manager? And then you can delegate as you see fit, but
Yes.
our charter says we work through you.
Yes, technically that's absolutely right. But we do send Greg and others to the Planning Commission. And of course, they receive some instructions from the Planning Commission. We do send folks to the Conservation Commission, so I think that language would need some buffing up to not prevent them from being able to do their job. And what about the irrelevant staff? I mean, who's speaking for them?
Give them a voice. Irene.
They're not irrelevant at all, but we do have some part-time staff and contractors in the room often, and they are not covered as far as I can tell by this, and I think that would be a great addition. We've had camera people in the past and recording secretaries and other folks who have spoken up in ways that I think were inappropriate. So I think another paragraph would be in order to make sure that everyone in the room who has an opinion around these issues, as well as a stake in the outcomes, is covered.
Okay.
So staff, even part-time staff, you're saying?
I don't know that they're part-time staff. They may be contractors. They may be like miscellaneous, other relevant folks. I don't know how you label them.
Yeah.
Okay, any other, thanks.
Sorry, I just want to ask a question about email. I know we can share emails if we're talking about scheduling a meeting.
Yes.
But anytime there's content other than that, I think it's inappropriate to copy more than one other select board member. And so there's been I don't know, I would say in a couple instances in the past several months where folks have been copying all. So I just want to bring that up. I mean, when I send my comments in about the select board package, I copy Pat and Doug and Greg and Max. Don't copy others, but so just a reminder
That's
that
probably wise.
Yeah.
I think I send a lot of information to everybody because I don't want to give the select board information that I may have differently.
One way is okay.
One way is okay.
yeah. And if you respond, just respond to Pat and Max or Pat. Well, I don't know. It's tough to say. You can't say one other because if that gets passed on to.
Yes. You always say
Can't
to
add a
send it to
third
Pat,
person to
and
a
he can
forward,
send it to
yes.
those
So
relevant.
he can send it back around, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Our life is complicated.
And to follow on with what Andy said, I can think of a recent instance where someone from another board in the town of Essex started copying everyone on emails. They may or may not be bound by this, but we are, and so that's very awkward. So we may want to tell all of our friends who are on other boards, not at 81 Main Street, that if they're going to copy the select board, that's inappropriate.
Okay.
Just saying, so maybe that's another paragraph.
Well,
I don't know, I guess, is it okay to share information one way as long as there's no discussion, or is
I
it,
think,
you
yeah, if
cannot
it's one
send
way, I
any
think,
information?
as Max said, yes, one-way communication. It's just,
you don't want to have dialogue.
Don't want to
That's
ever,
the
yeah,
Yeah.
it shouldn't respond, right?
and then, of course, if it's incomplete, and so maybe Irene has a question, or maybe Sue has a question, then, okay, you got to answer the question individually, but you can't, share that, because then you've all of a sudden started a conversation about it. It's very,
So
it's
this-
difficult.
This
these
is a work
days.
in progress. I think we made
Yes.
some strides. We'll get the social media piece.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to see if, just while you're doing that, to see if there's any teeth, and maybe
We'll do
not,
some,
but
we'll,
let's
we'll
just.
we'll do some research. I can certainly ask the attorneys, I mean, what we can and can't do. I mean, I would hate to have you adopt a policy that says,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you can,
Have to be
you can
blessed.
say, okay, you're
Right.
bad or something, and then to find out that you can't do that, it's against the law someplace. So we'll do some due diligence to make sure that we're on solid ground.
So when do we think, when we see the markup with the additions that we, I mean, I know the social media one, we said you're gonna do some research, but
Yeah.
like the adding the, not representing the board's opinion or.
Yeah.
Do we want to get that before it's complete, do you think? Or you want to just have the?
Yeah,
Well,
I
we'll do
mean,
the
I think we
communication
should add in
first.
what we've already agreed to add in.
Yeah, I'm gonna look to you, Greg, as the scribe. Is, if I commit us to the next meeting in June, is that too soon?
Right now, we'll say no, but
Okay, so it'll
you
either
never
be
know
the
what's gonna
next
come up,
meeting.
so we'll tentatively shoot for next
So
meeting.
the first, the last meeting in June, or the meeting in July, we only have one scheduled, and I think that's the 13th.
And that's our Thursday meeting.
Thursday meeting at the police station.
Yeah.
At the police station,
Yeah.
yes.
Just to make it really awkward.
So one of those two meetings, Sue, in answer to your question, is the target.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's move on to business item 5E. That's it. Review of application of joint committee for Chittenden County Public Safety Services. So, we're going to talk about that in executive session,
Right now?
or right now? What's the board's pleasure? Mike, did you hear the question?
I did.
Okay. So,
Well, I think we should follow our normal process and allow the applicant to
Yes,
comment
yeah.
before we,
That's what I was saying.
okay,
That'd be great.
okay.
I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
He's saying let's follow our normal practice and have the applicant talk about why they would like to be on this committee.
Okay?
Okay, so take it away, Irene.
Okay. So, as you know, I applied to serve on the Joint Survey Committee for the Regional Dispatch Project, which has a longer name. I've been to several of their meetings. I think it would behoove them to have someone else who's on a select board. Right now, there's currently only one select board member amid the many town managers and such folks, and then there's a fire chief. Given that this plan that they come up with, which looks like it will be a unified municipal district, at least at present, will need to go to the select boards for approval and city councils, and then to the voters. I think it's really important to have some folks who think along those lines, helping to craft the plan to make sure it can pass muster when it gets to those other hurdles.
Okay.
And so I'd entertain any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Irene on that?
I have one, Irene.
Yeah.
Maybe others, but the first one that immediately jumps to mind is if the initial discussions are leaning toward a UMD and you're quite vociferous opposition to UMDs in general, I'm just wondering how you're going to be able to be open-minded about this, given past history.
Good question. My opposition to a UMD in last summers rec district proposal ended up being more about the run-up to the decision-making than it was about the UMD itself.
I didn't get that impression. I believe, and I can't quote chapter and verse, but it seemed to me that yes, you weren't happy about the way that it was run up, but I believe your position was basically to torpedo all UNDs, and you went far and wide to find information that basically bore out that position. I disagree. I respectfully disagree. I definitely walked away or listened to that with the impression that all UMDs were no good.
Well, they are if you've got better alternatives on the table. And one of my questions would be to this JSC this summer, have we adequately looked at interlocal agreements or other options as we move forward with the UMD that the consultants recommended? We did pay a lot of money to consultants, and they did come up with this, but I have still heard other questions in the background that I think are worth bringing forward, and since apparently people sitting at the table have not yet brought that forward, I have no problem bringing up questions that may not make me popular around that table, because it's not about me. It's about what's best for the voters in each particular situation. With last year's recreation district, I came out strongly that a third government was not necessary. Everything else we had consolidated was consolidated under town hall, and recreation could just as easily been consolidated that way. That was the position I came out with in August, before the select board had a position, which in fact the select board never did have a position, even through the December vote. But what I was interested to find out was, as soon as I started talking to people at the polls in August, one resident came to me and said, have you looked at the minutes from the meeting in November with the joint select board and village trustees? And in that meeting, several high-level people spoke about the recreation district as though it were a done deal. Then there was an early December meeting that someone else pointed me to, in which Brad Luck and George Tyler both spoke about the recreation district as if it were a done deal. So the more that people came to me uncovering evidence, the more of the backstory I was able to construct. And I and many other people then discovered that our initial misgivings went much more deeply. And yes, if I were appointed to this, but even if I'm not appointed to this JSC, I plan to do research to uncover what's gone on up until now. I plan to be at all the rest of the meetings that they're holding to watch how it unfolds, because I believe that watchdogs are rare and important in governance conversations like this. There are many people who are constrained by their beliefs, by their alliances, by their ambitions, perhaps. I am not one of them. All I'm looking to do is find the best governance model for regional dispatch, if that's the way we decide to go. And if Essex, as a select board, as a town, decides not to go that way, there are other ways to speed up our response time with emergency services. And I'll go into those later, but I don't want to just take over. Thanks.
Andy, you had a question or comment?
Is there, just looking for a clarification, I don't know if Pat, you can help on this, but I thought it was already decided that it will be a UMD if it goes forward.
Yeah.
So it's already.
In fact, at the last meeting, there was a vote to incorporate this study work that was done. If you remember, when the people came here, they talked about the fact that a UMD has borne out through their study group. And then when they formed the joint study committee, that work done by that group was formally adopted at the last meeting. And Irene was at that meeting, and so was I.
But the language was not yet approved. We put that
no,
on hold.
no.
Even though we were being urged at that point, those in the room who are at the table were being urged to approve that language, some of which I objected to, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, because it cuts out the option for 5% of the voting public to petition the select board to go forward with this if the select board does not want to put it up for a vote. And I think that's just a real tragedy.
Let's recognize
committee
where we
would
are
take
in the
that away from
process.
people.
You're way ahead of the process. It's a draft document, and it's coming back to all the municipal leaders. It's
Yes, it
coming
is.
back to this body, as it will come back to all the other bodies, and that's when that discussion takes place. This is still a work in progress. Lots of other work is. So.
With all due respect, I sat on a merger task force, and I apologize. In my memo, I said 13 years ago. It was actually 12. I don't want to get ahead of myself. It was 12 years ago that I began sitting on a merger task force right here in this building. And I was told by many very senior members of select boards and village trustees, hang on, we'll get to that. Oh, don't worry, when this goes to the select board, we can change it. And I wasn't familiar enough with town government at that point, and I often trusted the wisdom of the people who told me, just wait, don't get ahead of yourself. And yet I found out that when push came to shove, a year and a half later, things were going full steam ahead, just as they had been sort of ramrodded in some of our opinions. And it was almost too late by then to change anything, because at that point it had the buy-in of all these people, and then there were reputations on the line. So yes, indeed, I would really like to intercept, ask the hard questions now before it goes too far along, because then it really is hard to turn that whole steamship around. I like to get in on the ground floor of these meetings, which is why I attended so many police facility meetings, as Justin mentioned. I'm attending these meetings. I attended our GSC meetings. I like to know what's going on so that when the select board gets this at the final bell, I know more than what I'm just being told by the well-meaning people who put these things together. I understand groupthink. I read a lot about how to make better decisions, and I like to try to employ that in new ways, because I understand that a lot of people sitting on committees feel that for some reason or other they can't really stick their neck out. But I have been fortunate to have that freedom, and yes, I think that I will use it, whether I'm in the audience or at the table, at these meetings and at future governance meetings.
Yeah, I'd like to comment too that I agree with Mike that I'm a bit concerned that you already, based on your Plan B, and I printed out your Plan B stuff here about UMDs, and it was nothing about them in reference to the rec per se, but that they're just awful in nature by themselves. And I could read all the comments about that. So I'm a little concerned that your mind's already made up about UMDs, and yet their mind's made up. So I agree with Mike that I have a similar concern.
Why would I apply to serve on a board for a UMD if I didn't think it might be one of the solutions?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that question, because I thought you had said in a prior meeting that you didn't want to be on this board. Just was curious what changed your position.
I wouldn't want to be on this board.
No, on the one that you're applying for.
Yes.
Yeah, you had said
The Joint Survey Committee.
I think there was it was Max that suggested that you might be interested, and you said no, you weren't. So this was just curious.
Because I hadn't yet done my homework, and I would never commit to something without attending some meetings, giving it serious thought, reading through the minutes, and seeing if indeed I were the right person for the job. I would never want to just jump to something just to get a position or a title or my name on something, because that's not how I operate. I'm very interested in seeing that this governance model is the correct one for regional dispatch for the county as well as for Essex, and those may be two different decisions. And again, I'll have to wear different hats perhaps in order to judge that. But I think my track record on these things is pretty good. And when I look at my track record, I'm really sorry there isn't more competition for this. But I don't think that you will be sorry if I'm the person that's appointed. But as I said, if I don't get appointed, I will still do the work, and you'll still hear from me on it. Thanks.
So what's the board's pleasure here? It was listed as potential executive session. Do we want to continue this in executive, or what's the board's pleasure? You want to come to a conclusion on this in open meeting? Or have the rest of the discussion in open meeting?
I vote executive session.
Okay, Mike's voting executive session. I think I saw Irene nod her head.
I'm not
Andy?
in it. I don't care.
What do you mean?
I'm not in the executive session discussing this with you, right? I mean, you're going to decide without me, I believe, because it's a personnel issue.
I don't know why you wouldn't be there.
Okay, well then I would,
You vote for yourself when you run for a seat
Okay.
on the,
Okay.
a position on the
Yeah,
board, right?
right.
So,
I didn't expect that.
Sue, okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I do have one question maybe
Sure.
for Greg. So from all of the advertising, did you have any inquiries? I know we don't have any other applicants, but did you have any inquiries?
I think we directed everything to Travis, and I did not hear of any inquiries, but I was also out last week, so I'm not sure. Did you hear of anything?
Not hear anything else.
Okay, so then I'd like to move on from 5E then. We're going to add that to our executive session to complete that discussion. And so I'd like to move on to business item 5F, and that's approval of minutes of the May 17th, 2017. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So approval of the select board minutes of May 15th, 2017 with corrections?
Yes, please.
Okay, do I have a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Irene and Sue. Let's start on page 1. Page 2. Sue. Sue?
Rows 90
Irene,
and
Andy.
91, where it references, at the end of row 90, Stella is outside and has begun dog obedience classes for Stella. Ms. Tornello indicated that she hadn't started obedience classes, that she had, quote, started to look into dog obedience classes.
Good. Anything else on that, Sue?
I do not have anything else on that
Okay, and I
page.
saw Irene next.
I would take out the word stormwater on 54, because we were corrected that that wasn't it. It's actually the Public Works Consolidation Committee, but
Yeah, so
let's just take out stormwater if we could.
Okay. I was going to suggest we take out stormwater consolidation and put in Public Works Evaluation Committee, because I think that's what it is, right?
It's a review committee per the MOU, isn't it? Yeah.
I think that's what the official title is, Public
That's
Works
fine.
Evaluation Committee.
Yep.
You see that on line 54?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on 2? Andy, you had
no,
something.
that was
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Page 3.
I-
Okay, I think Irene
Alright.
first and then Sue.
At the very bottom of the page, line 147, please, after registered and publicized. All our dogs are registered, but if the vicious ones were actually known, I think that's the point I was making in the parallel I was drawing to the registry that we all know about.
So not the
humans.
licensing you're talking about register because they're vicious dogs. Okay.
Yeah, register and publicize.
Okay, anything else? Sue, yes.
on row 110, actually wrapping from 109, members noted that this was Stella's first offense in Vermont. I think that was,
Right, because she said it bit
Wow.
a sibling. Yeah, Andy?
It bit another dog. This is a first offense of
Of biting a person.
biting a person. I don't think,
That's true.
that's true.
I think saying in Vermont implies more than it should.
Well, maybe its members noted that this was Stella's first offense biting a person.
Yeah.
Andy?
Biting another animal is not an offense.
No, she said
in that
biting
regard.
Okay, so if it,
So
see. So it's implied.
I
is what
think
you're
it's
saying.
implied. I mean, it might be a discussion between pet owners. We don't get involved in pets attacking other pets.
Yet.
Okay.
One other, I'm
Yet.
okay with that.
Okay, what else on 3?
On 115, because sometimes invisible fences don't work. I remember the discussion being because it requires training, like if you're,
Let's Sue finish.
I was just gonna add in, because Ms. Tornell doesn't own this property, and because sometimes invisible fences don't work. I don't think it was that they don't work, it's that
They don't contain.
Well, no, I mean, it only works as good as the training. I mean, you have to spend the time with the dog training to use the invisible fences.
Right.
So,
So what line are you referring to then?
115, I think that this don't work. I don't think it's a reflection of the invisible fence not working.
Aren't
It's a ref-
effective? What
I
do you
would
want?
suggest aren't effective. That's what I was going to say.
Does that work?
Aren't always effective.
Aren't always
Require
effective.
training to be effective.
Okay.
Is where I was
I
going.
don't believe that's the case. I believe the point that was made was that the dog would charge right through
That could be too.
whatever
Yep.
zap he's gonna get by breaching the invisible fence. I didn't know anything about training with an invisible fence. I think there was concern that the dog would charge through it.
I think that was the
I'm
discussion.
okay with
actually.
the or ineffective. I think
Okay,
that's,
so take out don't
better
work
than
and say-
don't work. Yeah.
Fences aren't always effective?
Sometimes it's there, so I don't think you need also.
Okay.
Don't you need all?
Or
don't
sometimes
al-
invisible
also need
fences aren't
always.
effective.
So
Okay.
sometimes invisible fences
Did you
aren't
get that?
effective.
So don't work comes out and say aren't effective. Okay. All right. Anything else on 3, Sue, before we leave you? Okay. And Andy.
Nope. That was it.
Irene.
Good.
We're good. Okay. Mike, anything on 3?
Nope.
Okay, let's go to 4. All right. Page 5. Irene, I know you have a few.
I have a few, and I handed out a separate sheet just so you could see the road map, hopefully, because
Mike, you don't have it, so listen carefully.
Somebody is shuffling paper there. Just hang tight on the shuffling of the paper so I can hear it.
Sorry, Mike. So you're quoted on the end of line 217 about a couple things that you said about 35 minutes later on the videotape. So I'm taking the whole rest of that paragraph and suggesting we move it after line 264 when it actually really happened. I'm not changing your words, I'm just moving it to when it happened.
Stand by. Okay, your point one more time, please, Irene.
Yeah, this actually happened later on in the meeting. So I want the minutes to at least be chronological. I don't mind that they're summarized, but I would like them to be in order, so if someone's following blow by blow, they can actually sort of follow these things. So I'm moving those lines 218 essentially to 221 to after 264.
Okay,
Okay?
So no change in the wording, just moving its location.
right.
Okay? Okay, and then the next paragraph, Mike, needs to be moved to 284 again for the same reason. It's exactly what was said, it just was said 40 minutes later.
Okay,
Line 233 is just incomplete. As you can see, there was no period at the end there. What Mr. Tyler said was its location is between two properties that are under redevelopment. So I wanted to complete that thought because it was important that he made it. The other ones are small. Line 243, Max actually said this. So I wanted him to get credit.
Did you get those there? It was 243.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, anything else on 5 from anybody? Okay, let's go to page 6. I know, Irene?
On line 291, it was Mr. Levy who agreed, at least on the videotape, so instead of Mr. Watts.
Okay. Anything else on 6? We'll go to page 7. Irene?
This would be at the top of the paragraph. First of all, I'll just read you the corrected version, Mike. Mrs. Renner didn't understand why she had asked for staff to address this issue back in January, and Ally agreed to, but it did not get done. And then I'm changing the word argument to comment in 297. And then in 298, taking out the period, I'm going to add the following text. It was inappropriate because topics raised by individuals at budget work sessions are regularly addressed without formal motions. And that's it for 7.
Anything else on 7?
Last
Go ahead. What's the question?
one was line what again, please?
It's
The last,
it's the new ending to the sentence that ends currently on 298 with the word inappropriate and a period?
Yep,
Okay.
okay.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else on 7? Let's go to 8. Page 9. Irene?
And Mr. Blagman, I had texted you this. I don't know if you got it earlier. The interaction between you and Mr. Shepherd was wholly left out of the minutes, and I think it's important for the public as well as the select board's record to include something about it. This was my offering. Feel free to change it. I suggested that we add at line 394, Mr. Shepherd asked what the select board's purpose is. If it's not to help educate the public, why should they show up? Mr. Plagman suggested he come prepared. Mr. Shepherd had read the packet. He came to learn more without being disrespected.
Actually, I did answer your text because you answered me back. I'm
Okay.
a little bit,
Thank you.
a little bit confused there.
I've already turned off my phone. Sorry.
I think there's a lot of that taken out of context, but you know what? Make the changes you see fit, Irene.
I tried to take out the emotion. That's all I tried to do as I was watching the videotape today and wrote it up.
I'm not sure you reflect. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes there that prompted that, and I'm not going to add them to the minutes because that's rewriting history. So you want to make the change, make the change. It's not for me to argue, but there was more going on there than that language reflects. I think everybody knows it. So
You can argue it. That's why we're reviewing the minutes this way, and people are making suggestions to corrections. They're not dictating those corrections. So if you object to it, you are more than welcome to say so, Mike.
but there was nothing there that reflected the fact that Ms. Gleason had already gone through the properties that were up here before the question by Mr. Shepherd. So when I said that he should come prepared, that was not my finest moment. It should have been phrased a little bit differently. But the fact of the matter was, the stuff that he was asking questions about had already been talked about in a public forum at that meeting. And I was frustrated that it was coming back around again because it was part of the record to begin with. So, like I said, it wasn't part of my talking to the issue. It was some frustration that I regret. So, like I said, I'm not going to rewrite history.
So are you saying you're okay with what she's proposing?
Yeah.
Okay.
If she feels that it's got to be in there, then put it in there.
Okay. What else on page 9? Irene.
I just would like to add for everyone's benefit, there are people who are hard of hearing that have begged us to have microphones, and we do now have microphones. They don't always work, and even with microphones, sometimes people cannot hear us. So I'm not making excuses for any audience member. I have not talked to him about that incident. It's just a question of, I think as members, and this isn't about you, Mike, just being sensitive to the fact that if someone asks us to clarify something that they missed, it could be for all kinds of reasons. It doesn't mean that they're just harassing us, right? It could be for any reason.
Like I said, Irene, don't belabor the point. I already admitted it was not my finest moment. Let's let it make your change and let's move on.
Okay, let's move on. Irene, there's something on 413.
Yes.
Just letting the fire trucks pass here, Mike.
Yep, thanks.
I thought they were coming for us. 413, Ms. Renner did not believe that the ideal candidate for this governance committee needed familiarity with public safety is how I'd like it to read.
Okay, anything else on 9? Page 10. Page 11. And we're down to page 11.
11, please. On 495 at the end, let's just keep this short and sweet. She noticed that the meeting runtime is incomplete. That was the issue. And asked that it be corrected. Can stay in there.
You get that, Darren? Okay, good. All right, and 12. Okay, all those in favor of the Select Board minutes of May 15th, 2017 with corrections, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. We're going to move on to the approval of the joint Essex Town School District minutes with the Select Board of May 22nd, 2017 with Select Board corrections. Do I have a motion?
I would move approval of the special board meeting held at EHS, 5:30 p.m. on May 22nd.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Irene and Sue. Okay. First thing we have, though, is the list of who is there, and I noticed that Sue is not listed. So we'd like to add Sue to that attendee list, and perhaps we can say by phone, because she was hooked up by phone.
That's what I had thought. And it should just say Sue Cook, Essex Select Board via phone.
Okay.
So.
Great.
It also has Paula D. Michelle's name wrong. It's Michelle.
Oh, yeah, that's 1, 2, 3,
Fifth.
4. Fifth name down, Darren? It's Paula DeMichael, isn't it?
Yeah,
Michael.
I think so.
Yeah. So it's D-E and then Michael, right? Okay. Anything else on that page? Okay, then let's go into the body of the minutes. In the beginning, Kim called the meeting, the Essex Town School Board meeting to order at 5:34, and I called the Select Board meeting to order, I guess we can say at 5:35. And on that same note, the end, the meeting adjourned of the school board at 6:30 p.m., but the Select Board adjourned at 6:25. Irene made the motion, right? And Andy, I believe, seconded it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, did you get that for the end?
One more time, Irene made a motion and
Irene
seconded.
and Andy seconded, and we adjourned at 6:25. Okay, anything else in there?
I have one.
Okay, Mike?
Right before the motions to adjourn on the second page, I never said or recommended making more use of the fields on Foster Road. What I did say was that I felt that team sports and physical education was a key and critical component of education. And that as long as the school district was going to make team sports and physical education a part of its curriculum, then I supported the new district maintaining ownership of those lands. That's what I said.
That's an awful lot to be adding into the minutes. What would you like to see added in the summarized minutes? That? What you said?
Yeah.
That works.
You have that there?
I think so.
I
On
mean,
the tape.
So,
if somebody wants to wordsmith it, the key component was that team sports and phys ed were, in my opinion, a key and critical component to education.
okay, that's good. That's succinct. Thank you. Okay, he's
But I think it's also important that the minutes reflect the fact that I said that the district maintaining ownership of those lands as long as team sports and phys ed was part of the core curriculum, that I supported that.
okay. Thanks, Mike. Anything else on? Oh, do you have more? Mike?
No.
Okay.
No.
I think I saw Irene. Then I'll come to you, Sue. Irene?
While we're on page 2, I was requesting that we add a paragraph right before the motion-making paragraph. It's Irene
Popular area.
Irene expressed gratitude for the meeting and relief at hearing these recreation lands are on the school's radar. Comments from the Red Study Committee and EWSD members that we're about education, not recreation, might have led the public to believe otherwise. My other correction would be the very last word on page 1. Just remove the S at the end of Paula DeMichael's name, please. Thank you.
She's singular.
Can't get her name right. Closer. But
Closer.
Paula, she.
Sue, you had
A
something.
question. The paragraph, I guess, third from the bottom on the first page. Robert Bates had questions on the maintenance of the prayer fields. Who does what? And what was listed was recreation mows, the school marks the field, Little League, and lacrosse also contribute. Isn't lacrosse the rec? Isn't lacrosse and rec the same thing?
Well, the high school has a lacrosse team, and the rec department has a lacrosse program as well.
Yeah, but this is at the
So-
Prairie Fields. This isn't the high school. This is the rec lacrosse.
If it's just a rec, yeah,
Probably the volunteers for lacrosse too, the coaches.
the coaches and all.
Like the Little League is, those folks help, so I'm guessing it's the same weekend. Follow up on that.
What was your question that lacrosse isn't
Well,
an appropriate
it
part of the
was
series?
we basically who does what? I mean, it's recreation does mows and does other things, right? Maybe through some of their programs, and the school marks the field, and I don't know. I guess Little League does something as well. So
Yes.
it just
It's a little awkward. Do you
it's a
want
little
to
awkward
reword
that
so
we're saying rec only mows, and then we're saying that lacrosse also does things. Well, but
Right.
lacrosse is rec, so
Is this the rec lacrosse team?
it is
Must
the
be.
rec lacrosse.
Yeah.
Yes. But
I don't know for sure.
I don't know for sure either, but one would assume that, given,
Well, it wouldn't be the high school.
Wouldn't be the high
lacrosse.
school 'cause
I
they
mean, I
play
guess it
on-
could
But-
be middle school. lacrosse,
Andy?
But not
But
all,
there is
not
no
all the
middle school
people who
lacrosse.
help with lacrosse are part of the rec department. They might be just volunteers, spectators. I don't know. That's why.
So maybe
like-
that's
like
the
as you
distinction.
said, that it's
So mowing is the actual rec employees, and this
yes,
is,
because rec
these
does mow
are
the Little League.
people associated with the rec program.
Well, the town mows the Little League fields during Little League season, and so it would stand to reason they mow that field during its summer use programs, so, yes. So the rec part would be the rec employee, I would think, the rec staff doing the work,
Doing the mowing
doing the mowing, yes.
with volunteers
Yeah.
from Little League and lacrosse.
They would do the striping of the base paths and the coaches' boxes and those kinds of things.
So maybe that's
keep it off the
distinct. Recreation employees mow,
That would probably be the better correction.
and the others are all more
Yes,
volunteers that are connected to rec
Yes.
programs.
yes.
So Derek, can you correct that or make that clear? So it's the recreation
employees.
employees do the mowing, schools mark the field, and volunteers from Little League and lacrosse also
Yeah, that's
contribute.
good. Thank you.
Does lacrosse have an E at the end?
Pardon me?
Does
It
lacrosse have an
an
E at the end?
It does have an E on the end.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, you guys know how
Thank
to
you.
spell, that's good. I use LAX. It's-
Yeah,
I noticed.
that's an airport. Okay, any other changes or corrections to the minutes?
Will
Irene?
these go to the school, or will they modify them their own
These are our
way?
minutes.
These are ours.
These are basically the
These are
select board
ours now, and
minutes,
these will
yeah.
get posted on our,
Yeah.
okay, just checking.
Okay, all those in favor of the, what do we call it, a special
Special meeting.
between the Essex Town School Board and the Select Board at 5:30 at the high school on May 22nd, 2017, with Select Board corrections, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0 unanimously. Okay, now
Yeah.
let's take a motion on consent agenda. Anybody?
I move approval of the consent agenda with select board member comments.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Irene and Sue. Okay, comments?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
There's a memo there about an update on recruitment and selection of staff, and I'd like to say that I was almost done when that memo was written. The conclusion, however, of that is that we have successfully appointed a member of the the family, really, to take over for the planner position that Greg is vacating.
Oh, really?
And who would that be?
And that would be Darren.
Oh,
really?
Right here at the end of
Welcome.
the table, so.
All right.
Nice.
um,
Essex wins.
And, really, it was a wonderful process. There were great candidates, and I was very, very happy how well Darren did. So, and your references were off the charts.
Great. Welcome to the team. From a volunteer to an employee.
Thank you.
We have to pay off for protection.
Just bring food.
Okay, any other comments? Irene,
So I'm looking at the last page of our radar, and my mic isn't working anymore.
you want to
It
share mine?
mentions the herbicide policy follow-up, which I think Darren already did for us. So I wondered if we still need to follow up on herbicides,
No.
or what, or can we actually cross it off and feel like we
Woohoo!
accomplished something?
You could
Let's
delete
do
that.
that, yeah.
I think
I
there,
thought we
I
asked
actually
them
think
questions.
when we had the herbicide discussion, wasn't it that, one of the utilities, we had information about, from one of the utilities, but not the other utility, right?
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
Yes.
You know this?
Next,
Yep.
Betsy? So, that is correct. We heard all the policy and the procedures from Belco. We hadn't gotten the detailed procedures and formulation of herbicides from DEC. I don't remember if we decided that I should follow up on that, or if we accepted, or if you accepted that they likely used the same or similar formulations. That's how I remember, but I don't actually remember what we decided.
That's what I remember.
That's what I remember
So
too.
we just need to follow up
We
with.
need to look to see whether we asked
Okay.
If we
for
use the
follow-up
same
or whether,
formulation.
Get back on it, right?
Now it does?
Works
That's
for him. It just doesn't
Oh, it
work
works
out.
for you, sorry. So could we just make this more specific then, herbicide policy follow-up with VEC or whatever the outstanding thing is, so that we know when we can cross it off? Because this was so vague, I wasn't sure. I thought we had done it. Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry,
I
Scott.
think that's, yeah,
Thank you.
that's Greg that's going to update that one. Yes.
I would just make the comment that our radar list is rather long. And have we at all thought about how we're going to attack our radar list or prioritize our
We're
radar
just
list?
glad we have
or-
it.
I'm very glad we have it as well, but we're also not, I mean, I was very excited about the thought of crossing something else off too, but, I think we ought to think about how we actually,
Well, I think it's a matter of prioritization.
Yep,
It's
I
a
agree.
matter of available staff and resources. And we seem to be able to add to the list quite easily without suggesting what we will not do that we are currently doing to get to the radar list. So that's the thought that has always been our goals and objectives. We do not have the capacity to get everything done that we talk about doing in any given year. It's just not going to happen. And the reason is that our number one goal is focusing on the dollar resources available to us. We have had whole departments leave. So right now, the priority for me is to replace people and get them up to speed. The people that are coming in might not be able to simply pick up where the other individuals left who have been here for some time. So this list is particularly slower than any other list in the past, I'm sorry to say, in large part because of the turnover of staff. So with that reality, and trying to be as honest as I can, I haven't set pen to paper on prioritizing these. We're trying not to forget them, which is like 90% of
First
it.
step, yeah. That's the best I have to offer. I will make you this promise, though, that I will look at it with that viewpoint and see if there's something we can knock out before we get to the budget to have a retreat to add more things that we probably won't get done right away.
well, I guess I was just thinking that maybe as a board, we should, put a half an hour on agenda to go through and,
Not saying when they have to be done, but just to at least
Wait.
prioritize the radar list.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
that if you're going to, try to chip away at that, at least.
right, exactly,
okay.
yeah.
And that's a good thought, and that's something that I'm sure we can do within the next 2 or 3 meetings to have that available for you. It ties into something that I want to say in executive session, so believe it or not.
Okay. Andy, you had your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if you're willing to accept the fact that accept the human service needs assessment work that I did, and and you want to cross something off, you could cross off the last one on the list in the upper section there. It says review a United Way human service needs assessment. You could cross that off if you want, because if you're willing to accept the work that I did on that, it's on the first page. It's not on the.
And we also made progress on the second bullet under the radar list. Updates to policies, including communications.
Yeah, I think we could take that review United Way assessments need. Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
what was the other one, Sue, that you recommended?
The second bullet under radar list says updates to policies, including communications, conflict of interest.
We've actually done the
We,
updates.
we didn't finish it, but we started
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Started
Well,
it.
Ongoing.
It's in progress.
In progress, yes.
Yep, let's move on.
We do have a system for doing this. We haven't, do you remember that system, Doug, that we had where we had checkoffs and where we were, and we ranked them by percentage complete? That's what I'm thinking of, trying to dig out and place these on that
Yeah, we
list
used
as
to
a
do
way
that.
of, yeah.
Harry?
The second from the bottom on the first page says regional dispatch, so if someone gets appointed, that could come off. Also, I just wonder if we could change the margins on the first page, because then everything would fit on one page, and at least psychologically, it wouldn't feel like we have 2 pages of radar list. At least until it grows again. I like saving trees.
No, that's good to save those trees. Ranking
All right, any other comments on consent? We have a lot of work to do.
priorities.
Executive soon.
And I'm not trying to be smart with my answer, by the way. I'm just trying to be realistic. So
Okay.
please understand that.
Okay, yeah, Mike, you have any comments on the consent?
No, thank you.
Okay. Everybody else okay? All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously, 5-0. So we need executive session for a few things.
Several motions
And
here.
we're gonna need to do a number of motions. The one that's labeled executive session / contract. We want to start with that one. The only motion change, I think, is in motion 2, where it says who would to be included. We can cross out Director of Public Works because Dennis is not here.
Okay.
So would somebody be willing to do a motion for executive session to talk about contract?
Sure.
Andy?
I move that the Select Board make the specific finding that premature general public knowledge of the Select Board's position concerning the proposed labor relations agreement would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Andy. Do I have a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Irene. Any further discussion on motion 1 for executive session? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously, 5-0. And we need another motion. Andy?
I move that the Select Board enter into executive session to discuss a proposed labor relations agreement pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313A1B to include the manager, director of administrative services, assistant manager.
Thank you, Andy. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Sue. All those in any further discussion?
Do we need to do the other motion first, which is an outside the executive session motion? I'm just confused as to.
What do you mean?
Before you start the other?
Do we have to do both motion 1s rather than the motion 2s? Because it sounds like once we're in executive session, we probably shouldn't be making a motion outside of executive session.
Are those?
I don't know how the logic works with this law.
Good point.
Yeah, motion 1 on both these are identical, right? So there's no need to do those, but we will
Okay.
need a motion 3.
Yeah, motion
Right.
1 on all 3 of them are the same.
Okay, great. Thank
Not
you.
quite,
No?
no.
They're not quite the same?
In the first one, it was.
Oh, yeah,
the select
public
board's
knowledge.
position concerning
So,
proposed
friendly
labor
amendment?
Relations agreement.
Okay.
A friendly amendment could be and proposed public official appointment.
That would be my
Place
friendly
the
amendment.
town at disadvantage.
Right, because those are the same on those 2. Yeah.
Okay. So now they can be combined.
Can we friendly amendment a motion we've already approved?
Yeah, we already approved it, so I think we need to go into we'll
We
have-
can cure it.
Well, we can vote down the second motion, do this motion,
or we
and then
can just
redo
do
the other
this
motion.
next motion.
Do this next
Call it a
motion
day.
and then back it up.
Yeah. I would entertain motion 1.B. whatever.
All right, I move the select board make the specific finding that premature general public knowledge of the select board's position concerning the proposed public official appointment would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Ann. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Sue, any further discussion? All those in favor of entering executive session under that motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay.
So we
Motion,
did not yet approve the motion to go into executive session, though.
Right.
We inserted another motion between, so we still have to vote to go into executive session.
Well, we're gonna need to do this other motion as well, motion 2.
It's the same.
It's the
It's the
same.
same.
One motion can cover the both titles.
Okay.
Two of the pages have the same motion number 1, and they all have the same motion number 2.
Very good. Okay. So what's left? Do we have a
We need to vote on the motion to go into executive session.
Right.
We have not yet voted on motion number 2.
That was already made, okay. And that
That's
motion
already been
was,
Was that only about labor relations?
It doesn't say anything about,
No.
It does.
oh,
It's
it does.
different.
It is a different
So it has to
motion.
be another hybrid motion, sort of.
Okay, so this one, because we haven't voted on it yet, we can offer
You can
a
make
friendly
hybrid.
amendment to include, to discuss the proposed public official appointment. And
so it would
to,
be the same statute.
so it'd be it's the same statute,
Same people.
so it
You see that,
should,
Darren? What we're doing?
the motion should say, okay, I'll read the whole motion.
Yeah, read the whole
I'll read the whole
again.
motion.
You say
I move
yes,
that the
you
select
win.
board enter into executive session to discuss a proposed labor relations agreement and to discuss the proposed public official appointment pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A1B to include the manager, director of administrative services, and assistant manager.
Okay,
Second.
So we need a second. All right, great. Any further discussion on that? Entering executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously, 5-0. We'll be entering executive session.
36.
Yeah,
Are we
9:36.
gonna do it?
So Mike,
here,
I
or-
think we can, since it's just a matter of calling you, there's a phone in that conference room upstairs. Can we do it up there? And then we can start that immediately and not have to rush Scott. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.